What is your NSFW fun fact about yourself? Thanks to an autoimmune disease, my pee-pee is a couple of different colors. No other part of my body has been affected. Just my pee-pee. Girlfriend got a dildo with a suction cup and we were fooling around and I stuck it to my forehead. I was a dildo unicorn for about 30 seconds. Took it off. And the look of horror from her said it all. I had a giant purple bruise on my forehead. Couldn't find a good excuse, so I called out of work the next day and learned how to do makeup. Don't be a dildo unicorn. I once realigned the lower spine of a girl I had been seeing by, well, doggy style. She had been plagued by lower back and tailbone issues for months until that fateful day. She thanked me for my services and needless to say, my pee-pee is now licensed chiropractor. I once had to go to the hospital for what was diagnosed as a post-orgasmic migraine. My pee turns toilets purple. It was the freakiest thing when it started happening and my doctor couldn't figure out what was happening. I would use a toilet and then a few hours later brownish spots would appear and those spots would eventually turn a purplish color. My wife and I figured it had to be something to do with my medication because it only started happening when I switched to new meds. Eventually, after a lot of research, we found a paper in a medical journal that mentioned that in very rare cases the urine of patients who took my medication would have interactions with various household cleaners. That interaction can happen on the film of cleaning solution residue on toilets and turn brown, red or even purple. My testicles are drastically different sizes, like a golf ball and a macadamia nut. Edit, I appreciate the concern but nothing to worry about. They've been like that as long as I can remember. I saw a doctor when I was a teenager and he said there was likely an injury to the smaller one causing the larger one to grow extra for it during puberty. The former Prime Minister, Taoiseach, of Ireland has touched my penis. In a medical context. Of course. Edit, well. This blew up. Thanks for the awards. Wow. For context. This was about 12 or 13 years ago when he was doing his GP placement in my local practice. I needed something checked out and as I had worked in that practice doing archive filing during the summer as a kid. And my mum also worked there as a secretary. Ireland is tiny. I didn't want to go one of the regular docs as they all knew me. So I went to him. He then referred me to a specialist, who, again coincidentally, happened to be my best mate's father. I then had surgery twice after that to fix the issue. What I will say about him is that, while I, like most Irish people, have a number of things relating to his politics that I'm not a fan of, I will say that he was especially kind to my mum after my dad had a severe heart attack a few years ago. And that counts for a lot for me. My ass is covered in small scars. I hooked up with this girl and ended up staying over. Woke up in the middle of the night needing to pee. I'd had a few to drink and was naked. I had to pass through her living room to get to the bathroom. As I tiptoed my way through the living room I trod on her sleeping cat. Cat screams and scratches me. I panic and stumble ass first through a small glass table. I had about 20 cuts in my ass. Blood everywhere and of course just to round things off I pissed right then and there. Needless to say the girl woke up to a traumatized cat, a destroyed coffee table and a living room covered in piss and blood. I left very shortly afterwards and was not surprised to find myself blocked instantly. But I still carry the scars to this day. I don't know if this is NSFW but when I was born my pee-pee was so crooked they had to completely rearrange it in surgery. They said that if it was left as it was my pee-pee would point at a 60 or so degree angle to the left and that urinating would have been quite the task. I had hanky-panky in a very expensive stolen car. I didn't know it was stolen at the time. My frick buddy worked at a car dealer and said they were allowed to borrow the cars after hours but, when we saw a cop afterwards, screamed get out and we left and ran down the Embarcadero. For about a month. I worried that the cops would find me due to my fingerprints being all over the place, but that was when I was young and thought cops actually cared about that kind of stuff. Every time I cry, I get a boner. The news of my grandmother's death was not an exception. I have breast implants from having breast cancer. They get cold and it's built-in air conditioning. I went through a phase where I was having a lot of semi-casual hanky-panky with the same 3-4 guys for like a year. I didn't want to date any of them and none of them wanted to date me, and they all knew I was sleeping with other dudes. Some of them even thought that was hot. Anyway, I started thinking I might be emotionally ready for a relationship again, and I wanted to make sure that when I did meet someone I loved, I was the best lover I could be. So I polled all the dudes I was sleeping with for critical assessments of what I did well and what I could improve upon. Scores out of 5 and explanations basically. By all accounts, I'm really good in bed now. My last boyfriend said that he had no idea hanky-panky could feel that good, and he was 8 years older than me, and I owe a lot of that to my 2014 focus group. Whenever I go pee, I just brush my pubes. I found out the hard way that I can fit my hand in my ass after losing anal beads during sex. My picture was published in Playboy magazine. My record for having hanky-panky in one day was 7 times in a row. I just got a huge pimple on my PP. I thought it was an STD until it just popped while taking a shower, lol. At the height of experiencing prolonged concussion symptoms, I masturbated and felt a jolt, like a shock of electricity, travel up my body to the part of my brain where a light fixture fell on my head. My symptoms instantly subsided. When it squeezed my wrist, I immediately got pretty turned on. Apparently I miss physical contact. I once was the dude a lesbian chick had hanky-panky with, who upon having hanky-panky with me decided she does in fact like girls. I take this as both a compliment and an insult. An ant bit my testicles once while I was having hanky-panky at a hiking trail. In case anyone is wondering, it was awful. Smoking killed my libido, so I killed 2 birds with 1 stone and quit for good by rubbing one out each time I got a craving. Like multiple times a day. Especially at work. 10/10 would recommend. I got circumcised at 25 after slicing my foreskin, and a vasectomy at 30. My frankenbeans hate me. My dad was having hanky-panky with a hospital nurse while my mom was giving birth to me. That's long been used for the many fights and reasons my mom hates men. I use my right hand for everything. Except for masturbating. I just can't with my right hand. On occasion my dreams are so vivid that I mistake them as reality. And only realize it's not so after I wake up. The rare times when I have the urge to pee in the morning after stupidly drinking liters of water before I sleep, my dreams shift to being in the toilet where I pee. My brain and body get synchronized to my dream and I end up pissing in my pants. Weird ass embarrassing experience, and I'm in my 20s. Probably a consequence of stress. It bends to the right. I can Jedi mind trick myself to special go with no physical contact. I have 2 assholes update. I am sorry to those of you that feel misled. The second hole above my anus is inactive. There has been an inquisition or interrogation into my anus's orneanusis, no idea how to pluralize it. Second one isn't an anus, it's a hole in the crack of my ass that serves no purpose. One person suggested smuggling, but it would need to have very high cost to density to make sense. Anyway, thanks for the interest. I don't have a gag reflex, which hasn't been great the few times I've actually choked in something. I once spied on someone jerking off in the nearby stall at a mall toilet room. That was An experience, but I really don't want to repeat it. My PP is average. I developed a dime-size boil right by the base of my PP, on my abdomen. Not on my PP itself, thank God. I was probably 19 at the time. I could have gone to the doctor. But for some reason in my head I just knew that whelp. Gotta lance that thing. Looking back, I don't know why I thought that was wise. So I got a safety pin. Bent it open. Ran it through the flame of our stove's burner a few times. Wiped the area with an alcohol wipe. Put a pencil in my mouth to bite down on. And then poked a hole in it and squeezed a bit. I remember the feeling of the skin tearing as the squeezing pressure tore the pinhole wider. And some blood and pus squirted out into the sink. I rinsed. Doused the thing in peroxide. Wadded some gauze onto the spot and put a big waterproof bandage on. I changed the bandage each day and reapplied peroxide. It didn't reform. And within a week I was pretty much completely healed. Oddly enough, it didn't actually hurt when I did it. I think it formed below the epidermis and dermis. So there wasn't really a wound from it. It was more like popping a blister, where there's still intact skin underneath. I was oddly proud of myself for the whole thing. I felt like I had taken pretty good precautions to prevent infection and had generally prepared well. It was still stupid, but it all worked out. I open NSFW posts at work. Slept with a very quiet guy. Finished. Thought he did shortly after and was like that was totally better than the first time, and we cleaned up and passed out. Found out the next morning that he absolutely had not finished. Whoops. Total sweetheart though. Just never thought that as a woman I would finish and my FWB wouldn't. Edit. No. You guys. I didn't even give the man a chance to finish. I thought he was done, so I hopped off when apparently we were just doing a position change. He was too awkward to bring up that he wasn't done yet. For a little while back in 2015 to 2016, I was dating a very high libido woman and we drank a lot. Fricked like rabbits. A few weeks go by. And when we would have sex, I would special goo blood, well, very bloody cum. This happened for a couple months. Pretty gross. We wondered if my kidneys were failing. Was my bladder messed and leaking? So many questions for a couple months. We broke up, and after only a few days, I no longer had blood in my cum. Turns out, we were having to rough hanky-panky too often. And the constant pounding was rupturing blood vessels in my penis. And we never rested long enough to let them fully heal. The blood pressure in my PP during sex, coupled with the abuse, was filling my urethra with blood. Moral of the story, frick too hard for too long and too often. You can break your PP. Edit. Amazing that this is the most popular post I've ever put out there. Not sure how to feel about that, lol. Double edit. I learned some of us men get harder than normal. And that makes this affliction more likely. Call it a double-edged sword. Due to an error in the hospital system that happened when I was born, my last name is technically Kuma. I've had hanky-panky more often in groups than one-on-one. I was about 13 and came home from a Boy Scout camping trip to discover there was a tick on the underside of my PP shaft. Even though you learn about how to handle them in Boy Scouts, I nevertheless freaked out because there was a tick on my goddamn dick. I asked my dad for help and he carefully used the match head trick to get rid of it. Cut to 20 plus years later and my parents, a bunch of friends, a couple of parents of those friends and I are at a pizza place playing trivia, nomming some czar, and drinking. My dad is a lightweight and got pretty drunk. No idea how he got to the topic, but he's telling another parent that I was well endowed. The table was quiet when he said this, so all 10 plus people heard. I can only recall the tick PP debacle as the sole point where he ever would have seen anything. It was freaking embarrassing. I should have just left the tick alone and died in peace with my PP parasite. I'm an example that the birth control pill isn't always effective. I accidentally started giving another guy a handy dandy once. Edit. Okay. Story time. The guy was brain injured. I was working at a long-term brain trauma rehab facility. And one of my patients, we called them clients, was a guy that had incontinence issues. He wore adult diapers. But at night we would also put on a condom catheter, which was basically a condom connected to small hose that ran into a little pouch on the side of his bed. So every night we had to roll the condom onto him. One night, I rolled the condom on, but it rolled right back up. So I rolled it down again. And again. It rolled back up. This process went on a few times, until I noticed that he was getting an erection. Now, me being an idiot, my first thought was, oh, that will make this easier. Until I realized that I was basically giving a handy dandy to a brain injured guy in a diaper. I just looked up at him kind of surprised. And he was laughing his ass off. He goes, hey, that feels pretty good, in a tone where I knew he was giving me poop. So yeah. Accidental handy. Edit 2. No. I did not finish him off, you freaks. That would have been a horrible ethical violation and considered sexual assault of an incapacitated person.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.